Hey everybody, Jesse here. Coming at you with a video on how to replace a rack and pinion on a 2014 John Deere Gator 825i. A few disclaimers. I don't typically make videos on such topics as this because I'm not a professional mechanic by any means. I just work on things around here as they break. So that's one disclaimer. Also, another disclaimer just real quick before you start watching much of the video is I actually already have it replaced, but this video just kind of be to show you, just walk through the process of what I done to replace the actual rack and pinion. I'd also like to add on this video is that the reason that I was making this video, like I said, I'm not a professional mechanic, but the reason that I was going to make it and put it on here is because I'm kind of a visual learner myself, and when I do stuff around the house or work on things and I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to try to learn how to do it. I like to go on YouTube or Google and read or watch and see how to do it, and I just couldn't really find any videos on this model and the rack and pinion being removed from this model of a Gator. So that's one of the main reasons that I'm doing this video, to hopefully help somebody if they want to try to do this job themselves. So exactly what was going on with the John Deere Gator. It's actually not my Gator, but it's actually my parents'. They use it on their nursery farm, driving up and around the field, just doing different things. What was going on with it is when it was either parked or driving, when they would turn the steering wheel, it would make some kind of clicking and popping noises. And when I got to listening to it, of course, it sounded like it was down in the rack and pinion. The steering itself didn't seem to have any kind of issues. It steered fine. It was just making some pretty bad clicking and popping noises. And we thought it best just to go ahead and replace the rack and pinion because they didn't want to be driving it, and I didn't want to be driving it anywhere, and the steering just completely go out on it and end up wrecking it. So just thought we would just go ahead and replace the whole thing, the rack and pinion on it. Some of the tools that's needed to be used to replace the rack and pinion, I'll go over that real quick. You'll need a socket and ratchet set. You'll also need just some standard wrenches because some of the bolts on the Gator itself has some nuts on it, and so you'll need something to hold on to those nuts while you undo the bolts. You'll probably need a flathead screwdriver, and I'll show you where you need that a little bit later as we go through the walkthrough of it. You'll also need a jack, of course, to jack it up. Now, some may not use jack stands, but I noticed as I was jacking it up, it wasn't pretty stable, so I went ahead and put some jack stands under it as well. I wasn't really crawling under it, but I just didn't want it to fall while I was working on it, so I did use 2 jack stands, and I'll try to show you where I placed those on it. I need some blocks for the back of the wheels or something to keep it from rolling. I also used a hammer because the tie rod ends was pretty stuck in their place, and I think there's a tool to help remove those, but I just used a hammer to kind of knock them a little bit out of place. Also, to get the lug nuts off the wheels, you could use some kind of breaker bar. I used a impact drill to get those off. You'll also need some pliers to help remove one of the radiator hoses, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. I also wanted to add that I used a 5/16 Allen wrench socket for my ratchet. You have to use that, I believe, for the bolt on the lower steering shaft when you're trying to get it off the rack and pinion, so I want to add that in there as well. The parts themselves, the part that I used, I ordered on Amazon. It was like $150, the rack and pinion off there. I didn't go with the OEM part because it was about $370 something. So I tried to save a little bit of money and went with off-brand. I think it was Caltric, I believe, off Amazon. I believe the same part is also on eBay for around $150, and that does include the tie rod ends themselves. But if you want to go OEM, you can also find that online or go to your local John Deere dealership and probably have them to order it for you as well. But thought we'd just save a little bit of money and use the other one. And that part does seem to be working pretty well on the Gator. There was a few issues getting it put on, and I'll detail that as we go through that as well. Also, if you don't know what part to order for your John Deere Gator, you can go to the John Deere website, go under the section called parts. You could type in 825i. It should pull up the John Deere Gator 825i, and you can click on it and go into the different sections to see what part numbers that you need to look up to replace each individual part. When you look up the 825i on the John Deere website, there'll also be a 825i-S4, and I believe that is for the 4-seater. So yeah, so let's get into it and do kind of a quick walkthrough of how to replace it. And those that may be wondering why the John Deere Gator looks as dirty as it does, it's used pretty much throughout the day here on the nursery farm, and so it stays pretty much muddy going through the fields and stuff. So that's why it looks so dirty as we do this walkthrough today. So first, what you'll want to do is, of course, jack the Gator up. I just put my jack up under here the middle. There is a plate on the frame right there. I don't know if you can see it, but I just put the jack right there and jacked it up, and it is a little bit of slick, so my jack was trying to slide off a little bit, but once I got it jacked up, I put a jack stand, one on each side. There is a bar, I don't know if you can see it, right here, and there's one on the other side, so I put my jack stands, one on each side there, and that held it up pretty good, and I put two blocks on the back to keep it from rolling backwards. Something else you could do if you're concerned about it, you could also disconnect the battery cables, battery terminals under the seat. I didn't do that because there's not much electrical that you work with up here doing this job, but you could if you're concerned about that. So once you have it jacked up, I actually went ahead and removed both front wheels. You may not have to do that. You could leave them on, but to make it easier, I went ahead and took both of those off. They got 5 lug nuts, and again, I believe that's 3/4 of an inch on that. So once you get it jacked up, have the wheels off, come back here, you'll see the tie rod ends. If I get back here, right there, that is your tie rod end, and I believe that has a 19mm nut on the bottom of it. So you just unbolt that on both sides. You got one here and one on the other side by the wheel. This was a little bit hard to get off. This is actually the new one, it just got muddy, but the other one was a little bit hard to get off. What you could do is just leave the nut right at the end of the bolt itself, and I just took a hammer and just slightly beat the bottom of it until it comes up. I actually just went ahead and replaced the tie rods. The other tie rods was probably okay, but since this rack and pinion set came with new ones, I just went ahead and put them on here. So yeah, that's what you want to do to get those loose, is just beat them a little bit with a hammer under the bottom here. Just make sure this nut comes all the way to the end. That way, if you hit it with a hammer, you don't rip your threads. And what I would recommend doing next is just go ahead and remove the hood. It has 2 bolts, if you can see it, but there's the nut to one, and the bolt is just underneath. I don't know if you can see it there. It's up under there, and there's also one on the other side. I believe those are 13mm, but I would just go ahead and remove those 2 bolts and nuts. That way you can just take this whole hood off and make it a whole lot easier to work under here. Once you got that off, you can go ahead and remove this. This just pops right out. There we go. Just set that to the side. Okay, and once you got that out, then you want to start removing some of this stuff. Now, some people may not remove the radiator fan and the radiator shroud. I did, because it gave me quite a bit more room to work down in here. To do that, you remove this radiator brace here. It's just got 2 bolts. I believe those are 10mm. Just take that out. That makes the radiator itself movable. Next, you want to go ahead and remove the radiator fan. It's got 4 bolts, 2 on top, 2 on bottom. Here's one. There's one right there, 2 on the bottom. I believe that's 10mm. They just come right out. You can unhook the radiator fan electrical plug itself, and it should pull right out. I would go ahead and remove the radiator shroud also while I'm at it. That's what I did. Also has 4 bolts, 10mm, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. But then on the other side, it also has 2 bolts over here that holds this overflow container for the radiator. So a bolt here, a bolt right there. Take those 2 out. This just comes right out. Pull that out. This will come out. You'll probably actually have to disconnect this top radiator hose. That's where you'll use the pliers at. Just squeeze that clamp, pull that top radiator hose out, and this whole radiator shroud and container should all come out together. Okay, so once you got the radiator fan, radiator shroud, the hood off, the overflow container out, that'll give you a whole lot more room to work on the actual rack and pinion. So what we'll go to next is the racking pinion itself down here. So the racking pinion, there you go, you can see it, is right here. It's the whole rod that goes all the way across down through there. Connected to it is the lower steering shaft right here. It's actually got a bolt and a nut on it. You could go ahead and take that bolt and nut out if you want to, or you can wait a little bit because you won't be able to get that steering shaft off just yet. So if you hold off on removing that, if you just go ahead and go to the rack and pinion, you'll be able to go ahead and start getting some of those bolts off on it. And again, you'll have this radiator fan and radiator shroud off, so it'll probably give you about another 5 inches to be able to get down in there and work on it. The rack and pinion itself has about 6 bolts. There's 2 on this side, if you can see it. There's 2 back in there, and there's also 2 directly right there. And you'll also want to go ahead and unplug this wire right here. Okay, unplug that because you'll have to have that removed to be able to slide the rack and pinion out once you get it unbolted. After you get the 4 small bolts on the rack and pinion removed, you'll go next to the 2 bolts in the center here. I don't know if you'll be able to see them. Let's see if we can get down in there. Those 2 bolts right there on the left of the screen, you just take those off, and I think those are 13 millimeters. They have nuts on the back side. You can't see them, but back in here, behind this wall, is 2 nuts, so you'll have to have another wrench back there or something to hold on to those nuts while you undo those 2 bolts right there. Okay? Alright, and once you get all 6 of those bolts out, then your rack and pinion should be pretty loose. And also this metal shroud right here on the top here, it'll be loose as well, so you can actually go ahead and slide that out once you get these 2 big bolts out. Okay? Alright, so once you get all 6 bolts out, then if you haven't yet, you can go ahead and remove the bolt and the nut on this lower steering shaft here. And you may have to use a flathead screwdriver here to actually have this taken off, because sometimes it may be stuck on there pretty good. I can't get my camera down there to show you. Let me see if I can turn the steering wheel a little bit, get that angle. There we go. Okay. So once you get that nut and bolts off there, you can see it right here. You can see a little crack right there. You may have to get some kind of flathead screwdriver and push it down in there to actually open up the whole lower steering shaft a little bit so it'll slide off of the pinion itself. Be careful though, because you don't want to mess this lower steering shaft up, because it might be a little bit harder to find that actual piece if it breaks. So once you have the 6 bolts out, you have your lower steering shaft disconnected from your rack and pinion, you've got the bolt out, got it all disconnected, got it pulled off, then you should be able to slide the whole rack and pinion itself out. You might be able to pull it to my left or to the passenger side and get it out that way, but I found it easier to pull the whole rack and pinion set itself out to the left or toward the driver's side. So I just slid it right out. Once you get that out, then you just repeat the process, or just kind of work backwards from what we went through to put the new rack and pinions itself in. You just slide it back in. You want to connect the lower steering shaft to the new rack and pinion, stick it down on it. You may not have to put the bolt in just yet, but make sure it's down on there before you put the other 6 bolts back in, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to get that lower steering shaft probably connected to the new rack and pinion, because the rack and pinion will be too close to the frame of the Gator. But once you get the lower steering shaft connected, you get the 6 bolts in, put the other bolt and nut back into the lower steering shaft to tighten it down. Once you do all that, then you go back out, or you can go ahead and plug that plug back in, go back out and go ahead and put the radiator shroud, radiator fan back in, the overflow container, rehook your radiator hose, redo all of this, put your hood back on. You can go back out next. Then you want to go back out here and connect your new tie rod ends, put those in. You'll have to adjust it to make sure your front wheels line up. I just kind of eyeballed it. There probably is a better way to line up your front end, but that's what I did. I just kind of looked at the front of the Gator to make sure the wheels were straight. But just put those in, put the new nuts on. You'll see this nut right here in the center there. You'll have to tighten it up. I believe it's also 19 millimeters. Some people may recommend put some thread locker on that to hold that in. I didn't do that, but it may not be a bad idea to do that as well, to tighten that nut, keeping it from backing off. So yeah, just connect all of that. Do the same thing on the other side. Go ahead and put your wheels back on, your 5 lug nuts on each wheel, and then just go ahead and lower your Gator back down, and then you should be good to go from there. But so yeah, couple things on the parts themselves, on the rack and pinion I was going to tell you about. Like I said, I ordered the cheaper one for about $150 on Amazon. I think it was Caltrick is the company, and it comes with its own bolts, and it also comes with 2 new tie rod ends. But there's a couple things that goes along with that. When I was trying to put that part in, the Caltrick rack and pinion, the bolt pattern on it did not perfectly line up like the OEM rack and pinion did, so I had to finagle it a little bit to get it fit in there. And also the bolts that came with it was, the 2 main bolts that came with it in the middle, the big ones, was way too short. And so I actually just went ahead and used the original bolts that was used on the rack and pinion I took off. So if you go with OEM, should fit right back in there. But if you do end up going with a cheaper one, just keep that in mind. You may probably want to reuse your original bolts. So that's about it for this video. I hope it helps someone. I hope it helps someone if they go to replace, the rack and pinion on their A25i Gator. If you have any comments, feel free to put them down in the comment section. If you're a professional and if you see something where I could have did something better, just again, put that in the comment sections as well. Because if anybody watches this video, I want them to do it right. But I hope this helps someone. Hope it maybe saves somebody some money if they go to replace it themselves. But I hope y'all have a good day, and thank y'all for watching.